I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. Fashion and style. One, a form of self-expression. The other, a combination of distinctive features. Then there's the fashion industry. And while this industry has made clothes more affordable than ever, at a blindingly fast pace, there is a cost. And that cost is that the fashion industry produces 10% of all of humanity's carbon emissions and is the second largest consumer of the world's water supply. But what if we saw clothing as having a cyclical life cycle? And what if this view could be used to solve some of the problems within the fashion industry? And on top of that, what if fashion could be used to create and serve a community? Well, this episode's guests, Charlotte von Meister and Danielle Sturm, did just that when they created The Nest, a secondhand showroom and gathering space with a mission to elevate and incubate sustainable style. But The Nest and this episode is about much more than clothes. It's an episode about community, self-expression, the desire to change an industry, finding the ideal business partner, taking a huge risk, and finally creating a place for people to connect. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story of The Nest. Charlotte and Danielle, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, you're welcome.
We are sitting in the Nest PVD, your establishment. But for anybody that hasn't been here, or anybody that's outside of Providence and listening to the show, which, by the way, thank you. And if you're inside of Providence listening to the show, well, listen to the show from anywhere. Thanks. But for those not familiar with the Nest, who are you and what do you do? Like, what would be the elevator pitch of this place and what you do?
Yeah. We call ourselves a secondhand style collective, which means a lot of different things because we do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Do you want to give the pitch? You're the best at it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we are The Nest. We are a secondhand store. So we curate secondhand fashion, furniture, homewares. We also have a selection of handmade items from like local vendors here in Providence and around the area. So we sell things out of here. They're either secondhand, handmade, or upcycled. And we're also a community space. So we host different workshops and events that are either highlighting or hosted by local makers, designers, small businesses in the area. So it's a place for people to come in, feel inspired to shop secondhand, know that they don't need to follow the fast fashion trends necessarily. You can find good style from existing material and product. And then also a place for people to come in, learn something, connect with your community. And yeah, it's mostly about education, connection, and looking good while doing it.
Would you say it's also about fashion?
It's a lot about fashion.
So fashion would be like one of the core things at what this place is and what you both do.
I think though when we talk about fashion, a lot of it is about like being unique and having your own identity. Like Charlotte and I, one of the reasons both of us love fashion is because it's helped us grow and be more confident in ourselves. And we think that using fashion for anyone that comes into our space or anyone that interacts with the Nest is finding their own sense of fashion to make them feel better and more confident in their life, which we've slowly seen our community kind of take on that and move forward. So
Yeah. And not only is fashion a tool for self-expression and authenticity, sort of my experience and how I ended up here was I had worked in the fashion industry for a bunch of years, and the more I was able to see behind the curtain and see how things were really done and how things were manufactured and what employees were how they were treated on all different levels of, you know, the the whole cycle of the product, it's extremely toxic and it's very, very wasteful, and it's really shocking the more you learn about it. So for us here, we're trying to offer a really beautiful, curated, stylish collection of secondhand garments, style, fashion, shoes, bags, everything. So people feel that they don't need to go and buy new necessarily and add to that toxic cycle of just like constant consumerism and constant new material and new products being pushed out on an annual basis. But know that they can find good style from, like I said before, secondhand existing material.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good segue into this first question I have, which would be, and Danielle, I'll start with you. What is your history with fashion and style? Because I had read that, while like your wardrobe, and I'm definitely seeing it, nobody can see what I'm actually talking about, but like it's a very eclectic, very wild outfit. But you had said that before, you wore a lot of black to avoid like attention and judgment. You had trouble finding clothes in your size, things of that nature. So can you walk, like, because I think going through this part first, then talking about the business will kind of give it more of a backstory, which I think will be for the betterment of anybody listening to this. Can you go through just your history with fashion and style, like up until the business? So like everything before that, basically.
So if anyone's listening from my childhood, it's so funny. I think no one would look at me and be like, oh, she loves fashion growing up. And that's because I wasn't able to express myself fashion wise. I grew up in the Midwest.
Outside of Chicago, right?
Yes, outside Chicago. I grew up with a single father. I played a lot of sports, and there was nowhere to go shopping for clothes for a plus size girl, a plus size woman. Also things that were affordable. So we'd go to like Kohl's or Target or Walmart, and either I'm finding things that everyone already has that I've seen other people wearing at school, or I'm finding things that can't even fit me. So my whole life I kind of was like pushed into this box of not being able to find clothing that I could afford or wear, which led to me wearing things that were like from my sports teams, wearing a lot of black. Once I got into high school and was able to have my own car, I would start going to thrift stores. And that's when my love of like thrifting and antiquing was from like my childhood, my parents taking me there. But once I got my own car, I was like, oh, I can go to the thrift store down the street whenever I want and look through things. It was still really hard to find anything that fits plus size people. And that's one of kind of the missions we have here, is to be able to offer fashion for anybody at any size, because there's still a lack of that even in the industry today. That's affordable plus size clothing. So through high school, still was wearing a lot of black, because the other thing is I also was not confident in myself. I think a lot through the fashion industry and through media, plus size people are put down. They're not seen as pretty or beautiful. And that's something a lot of people take into their inside, into their being. Once I got to college, I think I was very lucky because I also am not a very shy person. So I always had that in my head. But at a certain point, I was like, fuck it. Like, I am hot. I am beautiful. I'm going to find clothes that make me feel that way. And I was just talking to Charlotte the other day. We're very into this is getting to our business a little bit, but we're very into the idea of like slow fashion and like doing things slowly. And I was telling her about how a lot of the clothes I have that I'm pulling out, like I've had for years. And I haven't worn, but at a certain point, I'm like, you know what, it's time to wear this. But it's taken me a long time to kind of cultivate my closet to a point where I can go into it and be like, I feel comfortable wearing all this. I can make all these different outfits with it. But it's taken me those years. And I think a lot of people are in this mindset of like, I need to feel good and look hot now, and I need to go find something at the mall. And I think that's where a lot of people fall into this trench of, nothing fits me. I don't feel good. I have really bad self-esteem at this point because I can't right away get that like feeling of
like instant
gratification. So I think that's just one thing I talk to a lot of people, especially plus size people, of like, wear what makes you feel good, wear as much as you want, and it will start to show kind of in your being. So through college, I started building up that, like, I was thrifting all the time, filling up clothes, finding clothes.
You're a collector.
I am a collector. And before starting the Nest, I got to a point, so that was very, very toxic. Charlotte would be mad at me, but my closet got too big. Like, it was huge. It was overflowing. I had all these beautiful pieces, especially plus size, which a lot of people are looking for, I think, is cute, like plus size clothing. So I started reselling my clothing on Depop and on Instagram and on eBay. And I found that there was like a market for people looking for stylish, like styled plus size clothing. Then I started going out and finding clothes and reselling them, and that slowly led into not just clothes and home goods and kind of furniture as well. But that's what led me into half a year ago when I met Charlotte.
And Danielle, I just want to call this out. Danielle said that I would be mad at her cluttered closet because I'm a professional organizer.
I want to go into that because
Not because I'm a brat.
No.
How dare you?
Sorry. No, she's making me better.
So I'm glad you said that. Not the how dare you part, but the professional organizer part, because you had a bit of a different experience with fashion. You grew up in New Jersey.
I did, yeah.
And you eventually, and I would like to hear about this, you had a history with the fashion industry, actually working in the industry. You were in the belly of the beast, so to speak. So what was that perspective? What kind of jobs did you have in the fashion industry? I think one of them was like anthropology. Anthropology.
Anthropology.
There you go.
I was a sales associate.
I can't
Anthro.
pronounce things.
Just call it anthro.
There we go. Anthro. That sounds like a disease. That sounds like anthrax.
I know.
or a good metal band, or a good Anthrax cover band. We're Anthro. Anthrax cover band.
Anthropology's like
Anthropology.
No.
Yeah, anthropology is like having an identity crisis right now as I hear this.
Or a Anthrax cover band, but everybody in the band wears stuff exclusively from Anthropology.
That'd be hilarious.
That's so
such a
contradicting too.
yeah.
Yeah. If you knew their style.
It's all like stained black and ripped up, and
it's all
and just,
ultra feminine wear.
Yeah, and just belting out Anthrax songs. Whoever needs a good idea for a cover band, there you go.
Yeah.
We're Anthro, the anthropology-clad Anthrax cover band.
Yep.
Playing at dusk soon. Anyway.
I think you're onto something there.
I can't play anything, but if somebody wants to take that idea, and I'll be their manager. That's
You're
fine.
the ideas man.
Exactly. I'm the guy getting a reference to a previous not even a previous episode. I've recorded so many episodes that are not out yet. Now I'm making references to stuff that doesn't exist. Anyway.
Edit that out.
Yep. I'm just gonna leave it in so everybody's like, what the hell is he referencing? I want to know now.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
But what was your professional history with the fashion industry? Because I think you have a unique perspective that eventually led to this business. But what was your history with the fashion industry? How did you get in? Did you have a perception of it was going to be one way, and then you're in there working and it's a whole different way? You were mentioning some things earlier. So can you walk the listeners and me through that?
It was a journey for sure, because I wanted to work in fashion from a really young age. I discovered secondhand style and vintage shopping when I was in high school, and before that I always did musical theater, and I loved the costuming. And when I first went to college, I thought I wanted to study film, but then I realized I was more attracted to costume design, so I switched and studied fashion marketing and management. And the whole idea was to work in the fashion industry, wear like stiletto heels and a hot pantsuit to work, have a corner office, be an executive.
So like some Devil Wears Prada type of aspirations.
Exactly. That's what I was picturing for myself. And then
get your Anna Wintour on.
Yeah, and I was working at Anthropology throughout like high school and college, and that's sort of where it started. And then when I graduated college, I moved to New York and started working. I worked at two different startup fashion brands. One was a lingerie brand, one was a bridal company. And when I actually got into the industry and learning about not only the production and the manufacturing side of the business, but then also how it's an industry that never sleeps. People want it all the time. Like the stock market closes on the weekend, but fashion is like constant. And especially with Amazon and, mass toxic consumerism now, everyone wants it now and more immediate. And it's not 2-day delivery, it's 1-day delivery, it's same-day delivery. It's just...
I think I read Zara was like, and they use this as like a point of pride in their brand. Just to add to that, like I read somewhere that like they can see something on a runway show, and then within 48 hours, because they've got like their manufacturing process and everything is so streamlined, 48 hours from saw it on the runway, they'll have their version of it in all of their stores all over the world in like 48 hours, which is insane.
Well, because Zara owns their own production facility, and so whenever they see it, their designers can just immediately push it through production because they can always prioritize what they need to get done because it's their own business. And I think that's another side of the fashion industry that people don't think about. There's so many intellectual property lawsuits between these designers, like showcasing, actually creating things on the runway, and then fast fashion brands are replicating it and just changing it just enough so they can get away with it.
Or even crazier would be like people making stuff on Etsy or Instagram and then they get followed like by this big brand thing and like, oh, I'm like, maybe they like my stuff and I'm going to get a job. And then all of a sudden they find their own thing knocked off. And it's just like, well, what are you going to do? Lawyer up? Cool. Like, we got an army of lawyers. What are you going to do about it? And then you have to, like, sometimes they have to sit and take it, which sucks.
Yeah. And so through my experience, and one thing that I kept hearing over and over again, like, I would be treated not well. Like, it was definitely a toxic work environment for sure at a bunch of different places. And what I just kept hearing echoed from all of the people above me were like, I had to do this too. Like, almost like it was a rite of passage. Like, you are being treated this way because, like, that's how I experienced it when I was younger. It's just like making excuses of like, I had to do this, so you have to do it too, or like, this is fair because this is just the way things are done. And that just didn't feel.
I love how like that's acceptable in one industry, but if you did that in another industry, they'd be like, there's the door, get the hell out.
Yeah. And so that was honestly really heartbreaking because I always loved fashion, and it was a tool from a very young age for me to be able to express myself when I didn't know necessarily how to do that like socially. Like, I could just put on an outfit and it said what I needed people to know about me in a sense. And so leaving that industry was a hard decision, but I completely went in the opposite direction.
I became a professional
organizer. So instead of pushing all of this product and things onto people. Instead, I was helping them declutter and find more intention in what they choose to keep in their home and what they choose to surround themselves with, and ultimately, like, how you move forward as a consumer. And a lot of the sessions, there's this shock factor to it where they'll see everything that they have. We'll take out everything from their closet. And like, I'm certified in the KonMari method, Marie Kondo. And so it's like you take everything out and you put it in a big pile and you have to hold everything. And there's a big shock aspect and shock factor to that when people see actually how much the quantity that they have. After a session, you think twice about how you shop and how you consume, and it changes your trajectory as a consumer going forward. And so that was always really validating, but I missed fashion, I missed style, and I found a really circular side to the business because when I was doing these closet consultations and decluttering people's closets, they had a lot of really beautiful items that they didn't want to wear anymore, but still had a lot of life to give. And they were like, I don't necessarily want to like give this away or donate. Like, I want to try to resell it. I don't know where to go. And so it just made a lot of sense for me to then resell their clothes for them. So I started doing clothing resale on the side, which was my way back into the fashion industry without actually working in the fashion industry. So I kept doing professional organizing, doing decluttering services, and then also I had a side of my business where I was reselling fashion from their closets as well. And then Danielle and I met, and we had so much in common when it came to loving secondhand and the treasure hunt and sourcing, and both of us wanted to expand beyond just clothing. We wanted to get into furniture and homewares as well. And so we united and created The Nest.
So before we get into that, and I think it is an interesting story on your end of, it was something that you were passionate about, right? That you were like, oh, fashion as a way of, and style as a way of self-expression. You really want it. And then you went and you achieved the dream, so to speak. And then you're like, oh, I really don't want to be here. Or like, this is not what I thought it was. Mm-hmm. And then coincidentally, like, your experience was, oh, hey, I like these. I like the idea of fashion style, but it's not for me, mm-hmm. or it's not being made with me in mind. And the reason why I'm saying those two things before we get into, and I promise everybody we will, I'm just trying to set this up correctly. Before we get into this, like, just on the fashion industry in general, because I know you both have some very strong and very, I want to say insider info, but I think stuff that maybe the average person like doesn't know when it comes to the industry. So one thing that I've heard both of you mention in previous interviews, videos, and stuff like that is that the fashion industry is the second most wasteful industry in the world behind, I think, like the oil and gas industry, right? From your own knowledge, having like an outsider view, an insider view, what are the ways that it is, and why is it that way? And like, why does it continue to be that way? Because it seems like it's just like, all right. Yep. And then it's like, oh, we got to do anything about it? It's like, no.
I think to break it down, as consumers, we just think about the product during its life with us. When it's in our possession, we don't think about where it came from. We don't think about where it's going afterwards. The fashion industry is so toxic because not only are the ways that they're manufacturing and dyeing and creating these fabrics, a lot of fabrics now are made out of plastic, the dyeing that goes into it, the runoff waste, these communities, these towns that the production facilities are located in are just being environmentally destroyed by the manufacturing of our garments, of fashion. And then on the other end, again, now that more clothing is being made out of plastic, when we don't want it anymore and we either donate it or some people just throw it out, it goes and sits in a landfill, or it gets shipped overseas to another country's, like an African country's local textile and apparel market, and it floods their industry. And then because it's really shitty quality, it just ends up in their landfill and then it doesn't break down for years. So it's not just like when we own a product, it's where did it come from and where is it going?
It's, correct me if I'm wrong, like it seems like not every brand, but like because there's actually two sides to this question I'm going to ask. First side is Danielle, I think it was you're the one that you were saying in a previous video I saw on your site that you found out that pieces by like the fast fashion type brands, like they're made to like basically rip or tear apart or whatever. And I've experienced that. Like after 4 wears, you're like, I'm like, now I'm pissed. What from both of your perspectives, why do you think that is? Because it seems like before. Before like years ago, or like talking about like my parents and my grandparents, like you would buy investment pieces. You can now. I mean, it's not like there aren't brands that don't like that do that, but you would buy investment pieces. You would go to a tailor, right? Like you would wear stuff, not necessarily utilitarian. Like people still had style back then and things like that, but it was just more of like the idea of like you kept things. And I'm going to get to the flip side in a moment. But why do you do you think there was like do you think this is like a United States thing? Do you think this is happening all over? Or do you think it's like a cultural thing that changed? Like, was it an evolution? Because I think that part is interesting too. Is like we went from, invest statement pieces and handing stuff down and having stuff that lasts for a while to, hey, we're gonna make stuff and we know we're gonna make it. It's gonna fall apart in 4 wears. Whereas before that would be like bad for a brand. Now it's like that's the cost of doing business, which.
I think these brands have gotten to a point where they're even just talking about like Zara being able to see something on a runway and get it on a shelf in 2 weeks. Like, that's going to be made not in a way that's going to be able to withstand anything because of how quick it was made. I think a lot of fashion, excuse me, please edit that out.
Bless you.
I think a lot of fashion companies have found this perfect like formula because of the internet, of being able to push trends on consumers. And I really think we talk about style trends all the time and like micro trends, and these companies are able to show consumers what they should be wearing. And I think that's where a lot of people are feeling left out and behind of like, I've seen these celebrities and I've seen people, influencers on social media wearing this type of style. I need to buy it now. It's cheap. They can buy it now. And the reason it's cheap is because it is going to fall apart. But it gives these people the satisfaction, these consumers the satisfaction to have it and be able to look like who they aspire to be or who they aspire to feel like. But that clothes then falls apart. But they don't understand that these big retailers are now putting new trends on them. So it's just this toxic cycle of marketing, of people being able to keep up with trends and cycles that are really being started by the companies that are making the clothes.
And then sometimes people don't even wear them. They just wear them to like flex on Instagram, and then they don't never wear it again. So it's like, that's a whole other like, bought it for one picture.
Totally.
That is what people are doing too.
Yeah.
That is
on one end, it's these fashion companies cutting corners. The quality is a lot lower because they don't necessarily want it to last forever. If you're shopping from a brand that is actually proud of the quality of the product, they'll have some sort of like buyback program or recycling program. Because
I want to get into that later on in this interview because I got some questions about that. Because they feel so confident
that it's not going to that they won't have to use that program very much because they are sure of the quality of their product. Whereas a lot of these fast fashion brands, they just want it to be as cheap, like cost effective as possible. And so there's actually a stat, I was reading this book where the weight of like a cotton t-shirt from the 90s is heavier than the weight of a cotton t-shirt today because they are just making fabrics even thinner and it literally falls apart in a few washes. But then on the other end, social media has taken over all of our lives. And to what you were saying is people just want something to be photographed in. It doesn't even need to last them for years or months. It just needs to last for that one photo, and then they can take it off.
Now, what are your thoughts on the flip side of it? And what I mean by the flip side is like there are companies that, and I would say more, how I say recent, like from the 90s, more so in the 2000s, but the 90s to now, at least in one area of fashion and style, which would be streetwear, like the idea of exclusive sneakers. We're only going to make like a couple hundred, and then like we're still using like, it's not like high end, we're just making a couple hundred, just artificial scarcity. So like, there's like the artificial scarcity. So on one hand we have like too much, then there's the artificial scarcity, and if you're not into streetwear sneakers, then maybe the other area would be like Louis Vuitton or these higher end luxury brands, which they'll, if something doesn't sell, like they don't put it on clearance. They'll intentionally like cut it so that way nobody can like resell it or flip it or ever do anything ever again. And
it's about their brand reputation, because
and then
it
just goes nowhere. It's like, well, then what do you like? What are they? So like, why is that? So on the one hand we have too much, but then can you go into or like have, what are your thoughts on like the artificial scarcity or like destroying stuff to protect the brand?
I think it's bullshit.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but
I think they don't want someone with a lower income to be representing their brand, which is really shitty at the core. And I think it also goes into projections of manufacturing as well. I think that overproduction is happening in every single brand. There's so much being thrown out. I saw it as my time as like a sales associate in high school and college. Like so much is torn up and thrown out. So much is sitting in the sales section forever. I just think that too many styles, too many products are even being manufactured on a regular basis. And that was one thing that I felt working in the fashion industry, is just the overwhelm of how much is being produced on a yearly basis. And like, where is it all going? Literally, where is it all going? And so these brands just end up incinerating or destroying things because they don't know. There's just too much. There's too much.
When I think about like artificial scarcity on like a lot of those streetwear brands, like I think that's just great marketing. Like you could be doing social media marketing and pushing all these styles and trends on people. But if you have a brand that people resonate with so much, like let's say sneakers, and you do that and you're selling out, like good for you. That's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I think it's better to sell out than to overproduce and then have to slash and throw out what you don't sell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're in like the reselling business for part two. So like I'm like, good for you. If you can grab those and make money off them and sell them to someone else, like cool. You're your own little entrepreneur.
So you have no problem with like the arbitrage, the flip of either hype or luxury, considering that you're both in that business.
I don't think so. I'm very against but I wouldn't buy it new. That's the thing. Yeah. Like I wouldn't buy that new, but there is people that do that, and that's how they make their living. And like I don't see anything wrong with that. I'd rather have like brands doing that than overproducing things that they don't know are going to sell, and then losing. And
I got a question about that for much later, so just hold that, just because something I've noticed, and I want to get your thoughts on. But that's going to be later.
Yes.
But all right. So you both have your history with fashion and style, very different histories, very strong opinions about the fashion and style industry. And, Chicago, New Jersey, respectively. How did you both end up in Rhode Island, and how did you both meet? Because I read that the idea for The Nest, so how did you, and actually, how did you both end up in Rhode Island? How did you both meet? And I think it was over dinner that you came up with the idea for The Nest?
You really did your research.
I try. And why The Nest? So, like, how did you get here? How did that dinner happen? And then why the name The Nest? Like, how did that all come about?
I can go first. Yeah. So I ended up in Rhode Island. So right after high school, my stepsister decided to go to Johnson & Wales for culinary because she wanted to be a culinary nutritionist. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to maybe go far away, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just follow you out to Rhode Island. Like, I didn't know anyone at the time that's ever been to Rhode Island. It was very like on a whim, like that sounds cool. Ended up going to Johnson & Wales for my undergrad, which was sports, entertainment, and event management. I ended up getting my MBA at Johnson & Wales as well. Just kind of like went right through on a 4+1 program. And then I was planning on maybe moving back to Chicago, maybe moving somewhere else. I wanted to work in like the music events industry, which I am so glad I did not with the pandemic at that point and making it my whole life. I got a job at a startup in Providence when I was still doing my master's degree, and it was a startup in the medical technology industry. And it wasn't just a company in like startup in the medical technology industry; it was a business accelerator and incubator. So pretty much, I helped start we had a nonprofit arm, we had an LLC arm, so I had like background in learning how to grow both those types of businesses. I was partnered with the state of Rhode Island to really grow and show that Rhode Island was a place to start your med tech company, and we were competing with Boston. So it was really like interesting and fun to be able to grow that industry and figure out networks and advisors and companies and like all the resources companies need to grow. And that's where I learned a lot about building businesses and building startups in like a very hardcore industry. And I was there for 3.5 years when I met Charlotte through my coworker.
Mm-hmm. So I ended up moving to Providence. Well, I actually went to high school in Rhode Island, so I've always felt that this was home in some sense. And then when I went to college down in Savannah, Georgia, and completely separate from my high school experience, all of my best friends that I made down there were from Rhode Island, born and raised Rhode Island. So I just kept finding myself pulled back here. And every time I would come to visit Rhode Island, I really loved the community that I was meeting, the people, the friends that I was making. I loved the way that I felt whenever I came here, the version of myself that I was able to be when I came to Rhode Island. So actually, at the start of the pandemic, I was living in Los Angeles, but then I couldn't afford to live in LA anymore because I was working as a professional organizer and couldn't go into people's homes. So I had to move back to New Jersey, move in with my parents, had, an identity crisis, an entrepreneur crisis, just like living at home with my parents over the summer of 2020, and decided that I needed to move out. And I was like, where do I go next? And Rhode Island seemed like a very obvious place to be. And so I moved here like end of September 2020, and almost immediately Danielle and I were connected through my good friend from college. Like their family was Danielle's coworker and boss.
Yeah.
And so through my mutual friends, huge reason why I moved up to Rhode Island was this family was Danielle's colleagues and coworkers and boss. And so we met each other pretty soon after I moved here, but it was always sort of like
everyone kept being like, have you gotten together yet? Have
Yeah.
you guys have you gotten coffee yet together? Because they were like, you guys have so many similarities. And it took us a while. We'd always run into each other and be like, someday.
Yeah, we would run into each other and be like, we should go to an estate sale together. Like almost like that plan that is never going to happen. But like, sure, it's nice to talk about. We were just like distant friends, would see each other around. And then Danielle was doing Groovy Babe, her online resale, mid-century modern resale, and I loved what you were doing. And I was doing the same thing between my professional organizing and then my closet resale. And I wanted to grow my brand and start expanding. And so I approached Danielle about doing a booth share together at the Providence flea market. Mm-hmm. And so we sat down, we just decided to get a dinner, like let's sit down and actually talk about logistics, what that would look like. And the moment we actually sat down and had a conversation, both of our ambition and passion and ideas just flooded and just came pouring out of both of us. And that was basically it. We were like, let's not do a flea market together. Let's start something together.
I think the biggest thing was Charlotte just moved here. I was kind of transitioning out of a job where I was like, what am I going to do next in Rhode Island? When the pandemic hit with my job, I was at a point where I'm like, I need to find something that makes me a little happier just in my day-to-day. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what could we do? And I think one of the things we connected over was making like Rhode Island and Providence somewhere like we wanted to be. Because I would find myself, I am like a very go. Like I love having plans. I love going out. I love doing new things, meeting new people. And I would find myself going to Boston all the time for like music and for events and for things. And all my friends moved there. And I was like, with Charlotte, we were like, why don't we create something that I don't have to go anywhere? I can just create what I want to do every day
Yeah.
and night, and events that I would want to go to and put them on ourselves. And I think that was one of the biggest things, like creating a community that we
Yeah.
want to be in and meet new people and attract people that were interested in the same things as us.
And both of
through.
us not being from Rhode Island originally, community and connection was a huge part of the Nest when we first started out. We wanted to make sure that it was a place where like we could meet like-minded people, and then also for others in the community could find
do the
connection
same.
as well.
So from the jump, it wasn't just, hey, let's have a vintage store or thrift store. It was, hey, let's have a store that sells vintage and thrift, but let's also do events. Let's
Yeah.
also do this. Let's also do that. So from the jump, it wasn't just one business model. It was multiple
The
things.
original idea was, hey, let's find a storage unit together that has good light so we could take photos to sell things online through our Instagram. It was really just the original idea was for us to get together and share lease on some space where we could use it as storage for like bigger items because we wanted to expand into furniture and stuff. We could use it as storage and then also use it as
so
like
the
a
idea of
photo
furniture
studio
was
space.
there from the get-go
Yes.
too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Both
And
of
we
us wanted
knew
to unite so that
when
we could expand.
When
and-
we united with
yeah.
each other, we knew like furniture is one of the like when we sell furniture, like that keeps the business going.
We're sitting on the furniture right now doing this podcast. which
We're
is
sitting on
interesting,
a gold velvet sectional from 1972.
Which was me and Charlotte have this thing where we just talk out loud about what we want to find, and then we find it. And this was one of those. I wanted a built-in velvet sectional, and then we found this built-in velvet sectional.
We manifested this sectional.
But furniture was like the big thing. So we talked about all these things. We talked about community. We like laid out pretty much like a business plan, but we didn't know it at the time. And then we went out and started looking for storage units together like a week later. And we were
Yeah.
looking for storage unit, looking for a storage space. Found this building, which is so funny because it's right now. Like this is the middle
I was gonna say,
block
can you-
from our apartment.
Yes.
Can you describe this spot, because it's next to an establishment called Ogie's,
Ogie's Trailer Park.
which is a very nice bar and has some great food too.
Yep.
It's like the watering hole of this neighborhood. It's an institution. It's the
I've-
perfect.
It was my college bar,
Yeah.
and now I'm there all the time.
And
we
you're,
love being next to them.
and you're next to the bar in a warehouse space on the second floor. So
Yeah.
how did you find out about the space? I know you said it was a block from like
We found it
your
on
respective
Craigslist.
apartments.
So
There you
both
go.
of us, when we were going to look for a storage studio space, we're looking everywhere, Craigslist, et cetera, looking. We didn't think that we'd be able to find anything in Providence. We were looking in Cranston and Pawtucket. And so when we found this building listed on Craigslist, there were multiple units that were up for lease. So we came in and did just like a big tour of any open unit. And our landlord has been amazing. Has been so amazing.
There's places for rent in this
There's-
building still.
yeah.
It's a great place.
DM
to
us
rent.
if you
Yes.
want to meet Lindsay. But it was really us finding the space and seeing that we were able to afford something in Providence in such a prime location next to Ogie's Trailer Park in the West End. We both live in the West End. We love this neighborhood. Sense of community, like we said, was so important. And so I think it was this space itself that really catapulted the idea of the Nest being way bigger than just selling furniture and fashion online.
Was there anything in particular about this space that you were like, yes, this is the one?
So
was
when-
it just the
yeah.
size? Was it just like
yes.
I mean, look at it.
it is, but to be fair, I'm seeing it with all the stuff, all the
Yeah.
design,
Yeah,
all
that's
the
true.
artwork. You know what I mean? Like when it was just bare,
was
like
blank.
what about this
Yeah.
was like, yes, this is the
It was the
spot.
windows.
The windows.
Oh, okay.
It was the
There's
windows.
8 huge windows in here.
I was gonna say you can like look into Ogie's and look at the people
Yeah,
partying in the
one
backyard.
of our windows looks onto the backyard.
But they're on the east and west, so we get morning daylight and evening, which like we take a lot of photos and we're like natural light. Like literally one of the things we were looking for was natural light just to make it easier for us. We don't need to get anything to set up for photos. But literally when we walked in here, it was the lighting and we were just, the size was, we were just like, this was the most expensive unit we looked at. And of course he showed it to us first. So I think that's one thing I'd be like, don't maybe do that, but also
don't look at the biggest one first. But
and you plopped out, not to cut you off, but you also were like next day.
oh, we signed the lease.
You signed the lease the next day, right?
Yeah. And it's actually funny. We toured, because the idea of this originally was just a storage unit, a photo studio. And so we'd actually toured this space with a third girl.
Yup.
Yeah, we toured the space with a third girl who was sort of like in and out. Maybe I want to be a part of it. And then Danielle and I the next day were like, we're signing the lease. Like, do you want to come with us? She was like, I don't know. I'm ready to take that leap with y'all right now. It did happen really quickly.
Yes.
It's speaking of leaps, because I think with any business or any venture, right, there's that leap of faith. Was signing the lease the next day like the leap of faith moment? Like, oh, like, nope, we're doing this. This is happening now.
I looked at Charlotte. I think I told her. Even my roommate and good friend, and she's a big part of the nest, Sarah. She does everything that we need her to for us. She's actually coming here to do a photo shoot later. But
Love you, Sarah.
Love you, Sarah. She looked at me and she goes, Danielle, like, you usually think about things a lot. Like, you're not like you.
What was this like for each of you individually? Was it like, yeah, like that's, or were we just like, oh crap?
I was very excited. It was, I felt so good about it. And that's what I told her. I'm like, usually I don't do things like this, but I feel so good about this that we're going to do it and we're going to make it work. That was my like reaction.
Yeah. I was all for it. And this might sound a little, I don't know, hokey. I don't even know what that word means. It might sound a little hokey, but through my experience and my like training and professional practice being a professional organizer, specifically with the KonMari method, it's all about learning to spark joy and what joy feels like and manifesting joy in other aspects of your life, which is deep down understanding if something is feeling that it's like serving you or if it's time to let it go if it's not quite right. And so I think through my experience, I really honed in on that like gut feeling. And so when this was all coming together, and because again, Danielle and I, we were kind of like distant friends. We didn't even really know each other that well when we decided to sign a lease, but it all just like, it felt so right. I could feel that gut instinct that it was like a joy sparking venture and it was kind of no looking back. And yeah, so we signed the lease and got the keys May 1st and then spent the whole summer
building everything,
building the concept. Because again, at first it was just supposed to be a storage unit. And so then once we actually found the space, we realized it could be much bigger than what we originally thought. And so we spent the summer conceptualizing it, building out the space.
Yeah. Building out the business plan.
Yeah.
So
branding, website.
Starting a business, especially something that gives you joy, that's creative. It's all well and good, but things cost money.
Yeah.
Especially like building out a space thing. How did you both find funding for this? Was it out of your personal accounts? Were you like, I'm all right, cashing in my savings? Did you get a business loan? Was it all of the above?
Cashing in savings.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
it was a huge leap of faith. Yeah. Yep. That this was going to work.
Yeah. And it was one of those things. I think I was in the reason we did this, I think it was just such a like weird, crazy, magical time of just everyone's lives. Cause it was a year and a half into the pandemic. I think a lot of people were going through that, like, I can't do what I've been doing like for the rest of my life anymore. I'm not happy. We don't know if we're going to go back to normal. We don't know what's going to be happening. And at that point it was like, what makes me happy is starting my own thing. It might be the most scariest thing I've been doing, but I'd rather spend 10 times more energy making this work than at the time working for someone else and
making something else work for somebody else that you don't really
exactly.
care.
So we self-funded it. After our opening, we made back and made profit off.
I want to ask about that in a little bit too.
Of everything, and we've just been reinvesting everything we've made back into the business.
Yeah, so it was definitely like our own savings as like overhead cost of actually building this out and getting it started. But since we've opened, we've made that money back that we put into it, and we've just keep putting the money back into the business.
How did you go about getting inventory? Because like this space is huge and it's filled. I mean, it's not filled to the point where you can't walk around, but it's not like there's like a lot of big open spare space, and it's filled with clothes.
You should see our back rooms
furniture,
and our basements,
boots, mirrors, and I even coming up here, I've seen like other furniture. I'm like, that's probably the nest.
That's ours.
So how did you
Thank you to our landlord for being so chill about that.
How did you go about did you like say, hey, we have this X amount of money put aside for inventory, and then there's like homers and all this other stuff. Like, how did you determine, all right, we're going to buy this much homer, we're going to buy this much furniture, we're going to buy this much clothes? Was there like a plan in place? Like, how did you go about, even budgeting for that? Or like, was it just more of like,
it was
find what you could find?
Me and Charlotte are very, like, our favorite part is finding everything. That is, like, we call it our treasure hunting. We haven't done it in a long time. It's really sad.
We should do everything else that is running a business.
But me and her, that's our favorite thing. So we're like on Craigslist and Facebook and going to flea markets. All summer we would go into flea markets, and it was really about like the deal. Like if we saw something that we loved and we were at the point where we were like, we could flip this, we would get it. We didn't have like a budget for different like homewares and clothing. It honestly just kind of worked out.
Yeah. And I think also when we first came together, both of us were doing resale on our own. So we had existing inventory and stock that we could put together. I think most of that was clothing, though. A lot of the furniture we've gone out and sourced since we've opened. But you'd be surprised with like estate sales, flea markets. You can do a good bundle deal. And if you barter well, and if you also kind of know the right people, cultivating relationships. Like we met this one woman who runs estate cleanouts, and we met her through Facebook Marketplace. We reached out actually about this shelf. I was like, this is a beautiful shelf. And she let us come into this house that she was cleaning out that was literally decorated in the 70s, and then nothing changed, and she let us pick through on our own, and you just put everything in a pile, and you're like, okay, X amount for all of this.
Yeah.
So I would say budgeting with the inventory isn't the budgeting that we had to do was for like the actual build out of the space. Like we had a custom work bar commissioned and cabinetry and like the archway for our fitting room and just stuff like that we had to budget for. But when it came to actually sourcing all of the inventory, that was like the fun and the easy and honestly the less expensive part.
Yeah.
And speaking of the inventory, and you were saying like, hey, that's like a thing that you want to keep, get back into again because you're running the business, but is like finding stuff and sourcing things, right? So I have a question, because I know some people who source certain things, like especially things like sneakers. That's my world. That's what I'm into, right? But they'll know like, and when I say no, it's a scary level of like they know what the tongue tag should look like for a Nike Air Jordan 1. Between the years of 1999 and like mid 2000s versus like when 2006 they changed the font. Like they'll know it to that like level, right? How much research do you both do, or like are there certain things that you research about, like either certain types of clothing, certain types of brands, certain types of furniture? Are there areas where like you don't know certain things? You're just like, hey, I get it because it'll look good for the shop. Like how much research or work goes behind even before you go out trying to source things like, oh, I know this brand. Like, I know this type of dress is from this brand and it's real and it's not a knockoff or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I know this glass is worth $50 and this person's only selling it for 10, so I'm going to grab it.
Yeah. I think clothing's been the easiest, where we're able to look at things and be able to tell like that it's vintage or where it's from. You can look at the tags and tell like what era it was made in. But with our clothing, it's not like we're not going and like researching every individual piece at this point,
because we're also not vintage exclusively.
Yes.
We call ourselves a secondhand collective for a reason, because everything, whether it be vintage or just like 3 years old, we curate all of it. And I think for us, when it comes to the curation and when we do go out sourcing and treasure hunting, it is about It's the style. It's the style. It's the curation, because we feel, and what we've heard from a lot of different people, they don't go thrifting and they don't shop secondhand because you have to dig sometimes for the good stuff. They don't know what's stylish,
they
what's
don't know
cool.
how it's going to look in their house.
They don't know how it's going to look in their house. It's overwhelming.
Or like lack of easy access to information to kind of like separate like the good from the objectively good from bad.
Or just being able to like visualize how certain pieces are going to look in your space, like curated in your way, which I think we've had a great.
So you need to make the Nest app where you can just use like AR on your phone, and then like
imagine this in your home.
Yeah, like you can just like see like okay, here's this vintage piece. Now here's a picture of your living room, and then like just drag it and resize it and be like, okay, it looked like that.
That's our next investment.
Yeah.
I just want 10% of the angel startup costs. Trademark. You're welcome.
With like furniture though, so the same with sourcing. We've gotten to a point where like people call us now and people come to us. So they'll be like, the other day, there's these two, when you head out.
I dropped off some jackets here because I was like, oh, they'll probably want them.
When you leave, look at that. We have two vintage couches downstairs now.
That was the couches I was referencing.
And we got a message from somebody on Instagram just like, hey, we love your store. My uncle's like have it like getting rid of everything in his house. Like, do you want to come take these? Just because people understand our style and know what we like. We have a lot of people coming to us. So like, that's, I think, where like, we're not going out and sourcing anymore. We're like sourcing through what people bring to us, which has been great. Same with the estate sales. We've gotten into like some underground, like we'll be able to go to estate sales before anyone else just because we've met the right people and we're nice.
Now that we're in the industry, people think to ask us. Yeah.
The same with, there's like a few people, like we'll get mid-century items and I'm like, oh, I know a guy. Like, I'm going to call him. He's going to look at it and tell me exactly what it is.
Well, has there ever been like, not to get too much into it, but has there ever been just like a really horrible or like weird one where it was like, oh, like, yeah, come by this thing and it's like, oh, this person used to be like a serial killer or like a drug dealer or something. Like, has there ever been like weird stuff like that you've ever run into and you're like, I'm going to get this piece, but then we need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What are you thinking of?
Nothing like specific, but always, sometimes I'll go to like some things and I'm like glad we go together now because sometimes I would go by myself and I'm like, I shouldn't be here by myself.
Yeah. I remember
or like they're trying to get rid of everything and then all of a sudden like the husband or wife or partner comes home and like they don't realize they were having an estate sale because they divorced them or some shit.
I wish that would have been like
the only thing
soap opera.
It wasn't even like that dramatic or anything, but we did go clean out this one woman's house because she was getting divorced and she didn't want anything that her ex-husband had sat on. So she was getting rid of everything in her house and was like not being quiet about it either. Like, ugh, that was his favorite lamp. Like, I'll give it you a deal. Like, take it away.
Yeah. Nothing too. I'm trying to think.
No, I think the only thing that I'm thinking of.
The dead mice.
Where were there dead mice?
In the 70s house.
Oh, yeah, there were dead mice.
We were digging through, and all of a sudden, there's all these dead mice.
I went to go pick up these, like, mirrors from Facebook Marketplace, and I show up, and there's, like, Trump flags all over the house. And I was just like, I'm going to get in, take this mirror, and get out. Bye.
I want to talk about aesthetic, and, you know, and speaking of aesthetics, there's no Trump flags here in this store. I mean, that'd be interesting if I walked in and I saw that. It's like, oh, good.
You're
Not
like,
what I expected.
Great. Not what I was expecting.
Not going to have any opinion more than that. Just be like, was not expecting. Like, if I were to see that, I'd be like, all right, that of things I was expecting to see, that would not be one of them.
Confusing.
Yeah, now I don't know what to think. But that is not the case here.
No.
But the aesthetic here, you have some custom design murals on the walls. You know, it is carefully curated.
Yes.
You know, and it's thought out. And that also extends from the space and into your branding and into your website and even the way that you do e-commerce, which I want to ask about in a little bit later. It's almost like it's a mix of store but also like seeing the clothes in their natural habitat almost as like, or seeing the items in their natural habitat, which is kind of nice. And not every, you know, thrift or vintage place does that. This type of like having a certain like almost like intangible branding, almost like an intangible like sense of look, was that planned from the get-go, or is that more like evolutionary? Because it does spill into like the marketing, it does spill into the website. So is that more of like a planned thing? Like, no, we're going for a certain look and a certain because like there may be items that would be great, but I'm assuming that there are certain items that like they're great for somebody else, they're not great for us. So like how like is there like a brand guideline that you like adhere to or something like that?
It's really just up to the two of us what we think looks good,
which is kind of scary, but also kind of like we're trying to ride on that, I think, strength.
Yeah, but I think for us, we know we're not the first to ever do resale, and we wanted to differentiate ourselves. Why are you coming to us versus any other thrift store or vintage shop in Rhode Island? Is because you like our style and you like our curation, and you know that you trust our eye. So when you come in, you will find something that you like.
I think something we talked about before we opened was having a very highly curated like secondhand space, like having people feel comfortable, because we throw events in here as well. Like we wanted it to be not only can you buy the things and be able to see how it looks in your home, but also warm and inviting for people that are in here hanging out and coming to events to be able to utilize it and see if like sit on the things and be able to understand see if they like it. We actually, after we opened, we were even more highly curated. So like our shelves, like it would look like a shelf of like in your home, but we were getting the feedback that people were like, it looks so nice, I don't want to touch anything.
Touch it. Yeah.
And we were like, please touch it. It's for sale. Like, you please go
break
look
it.
at
And
it.
then maybe I didn't want to buy
No,
it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We're like, it was, but everything was like that. So slowly we've been like putting all our glassware in one area so you can see it all and touch it and actually buy it.
We realized we were over curating. Yeah, because people were like, it's such a pretty like vignette. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, it feels like a gallery, and it's like, don't touch the thing.
I'm like, oh, please.
Exactly. People would come and they're like, am I allowed to sit on this? We're like, please.
See, they're gonna have
please.
flashbacks of like in their parents' home, their aunt and uncle's home, their grandma's home, where it was like, don't touch the sofa.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they're gonna have that. They're gonna have that horrible.
Yeah.
flashback.
And on the other end as well, we are trying to encourage people. There's such a thrifting and secondhand shopping is such a culture, but there are a lot of people who don't do it because they see secondhand as like used or dirty. And so for us, we wanted to showcase our secondhand collection in a more elevated, thoughtful, curated way. So it feels like you're receiving something like new or luxury, even though it has had a life before it's been in your hands, but now it's going to have a new life with
The skill of curation. Curation is defined as the selection and care of objects to be shown in a museum or to form part of a collection of art. While this definition is accurate, I would argue curation is a skill. Charlotte and Danielle both talked about how their curation of clothing, furniture, and artwork for the Nest was a major key in the success of that business. So, learn from Charlotte and Danielle. The skill of curation is not just limited to fashion or art. Curation can be applied to different areas. You should curate your resume when applying for a job. You should curate your portfolio to show your best work. You should curate your social media accounts to make sure you are crafting a consistent brand message. At the end of the day, learn and utilize the skill of curation, because once you do, you will show your best self to the world. So now, speaking of events, your first event, this is going to be a multi-part question. So your first event was a clothing swap. If you could explain to
Was it?
people.
Our first event was a resin workshop.
Oh, I thought it was a clothing swap.
That's okay. It was the same month.
Oh, okay.
But we can
All
talk
right.
about the clothing swap.
Within the opening month, there was a seminal event that was a clothing swap. If you could explain to the listeners what a clothing swap is, that's the first part. Second part, not to get into, gender labels or anything like that, but just being a guy, I've always noticed that even like growing up, that would be more of like clothing swap would be more of a feminine thing. Like the only time I ever like quote unquote swap clothes is if I had like a crazy pair of like Jordans that were rare and then somebody else had like a rare pair and they're like, okay, you want to trade or something like that. But like growing up, like the idea of a clothing swap, if you're a guy, like that just wasn't a thing. Like, why do you think that is? Because I think that's an interesting question to ask.
That's an interesting
so
question.
that's the second part. And then I'll get to the third part after you do those first two. So can you walk us through what a clothing swap is, why that was one of the first events, and then why that seems to not be a
Resonate.
guy or masculine oriented thing? Because that even to me, like I understand why they happen, but I was like, huh, like you never see that in like male vintage clothing stores. Like that's never a thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Do you want to talk about the clothing swaps?
I can talk about the clothing swaps. Clothing swaps just seemed really obvious. We've been
They're
wanting
part of our
to do it.
circular business
It's
model,
part of our
too.
it's part of our business model. It's part of rehoming these things, because you can have a dress that's in your closet for years and you don't wear it, but it's still good quality and it's cool style, but like it just doesn't look quite right or feel right on you, and so you want to get rid of it and want to make sure it goes to someone who's actually going to like love it and use it and wear it. And so what better way to ensure that it's going to a good home than circulating it in the community? So it's a great opportunity for people to shed the excess from their own wardrobe, while also finding cool new pieces, because something might feel so like old or last season to you because you've had it in your closet for so long, but it can be brand new for somebody else.
Yeah.
If you're in stuff in the background, that whole idea of there's units being available, they're renovating them. So there you go. So units are available
What you're
in this
hearing
building.
is heavy machinery.
For male clothing swaps, so when we started them, we opened them up to everybody, and I think it's because our not even our target market, but a lot of our people that follow us and are part of our community are feminine women. We are launching a menswear or extended styles line at the end of February to like open up. We've had a lot of people like, we want more like masculine clothes. We talk to a lot of men about if they would want to do a clothing swap, and all of them are like, no, they don't have big enough closets. I think like,
because I didn't know if it was like a cultural thing, if it was like a guy thing, if it was just like I don't have enough in my closet, or
I think a lot of them just don't have a lot in their closet that they are coming to donate. We held a partnered clothing swap around Halloween at our friend's house, and we actually had top floor like feminine clothing, bottom floor masculine clothing, and like someone brought like their uncle's old suits that were sitting in the house, and no one brought anything else because they were like, I don't have any excess in my closet. Like I wear everything.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to like hear that. All of our clothing swaps are open to anybody, but we just don't have a lot of.
Yeah, more.
Was that a pleasant surprise to you that it's like, oh, guys have less in their closets?
I'm not surprised.
Or just aren't looking to shop and bring new pieces in as much as like a feminine identifying person is. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just didn't. I was like, yeah, you don't hear that. So like you don't like whenever I think of clothing swap, like whenever I see it, it is associated with more feminine. I was just like, is that a cult? I was wondering, like, is that a cultural thing? Is that like a thing? One? Would I go to a clothing swap?
Would you like get all your things together and be there at that time to do it?
If I had enough stuff, I think I gave you most of it already. So it puts me out of the equation. See? I already did it.
See?
I already did it. I was just really, really, really early. That's my.
I wonder, this is just something I'm thinking of right now. When I do hear the people coming to our clothing swaps, the huge thing that I hear from them is I want to make sure that this is going to be loved. Like what I'm giving up, I want to make sure that it's going to someone who's going to like style it properly. And maybe for some men, they just don't really care where it goes. They're like, oh, I'm just going to donate it. So like,
yeah, that's usually my line of thinking.
I'm just going to drop it off. Yeah.
Or if I know the piece well enough, I'm like, I know I can make some money on this.
Exactly.
Like or I can trade it, or I can trade it for something I've been wanting, but it's usually very specific. You know, it's like, okay, I got this like Ralph Lauren jacket. I can probably trade it for another Ralph Lauren piece or a piece from like Nautica or something. But it's usually more specific. It's not like, let me just go to a clothing swap and see what happens. Or it's I don't care what happens after.
It's interesting that you say that because we're extending our clothing collection to include more masculine styles. We're throwing a party at the end of the month. You should come Friday, February 25th. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a DJ in a bar, etc. But when we've been sourcing, putting this this has been a few months in the making at this point, and we brought on 2 different consultants, 2 men, to tell us about like men's shopping habits and all these things. And one of our consultants, Dion, he was telling us that when guys go out shopping, they are thinking of the resale value. Like, how much could I flip this for? Like, I'm going to take this for myself and wear it for a while, but like, what is the next step for it? Like, oh, if I can resell this, and like that's actually worth me buying it now.
Oh, that's
and that's
to me.
I didn't before we started doing resale. I didn't. That's not how I shop.
That's not how I shop either.
Even now, that's not how I shop now.
For myself, no.
Like I had found a shirt, just personal story from that. Like I found a shirt that was by a brand called Neighborhood, and I got it at like a clearance at Riccardi in Boston a few years back, and lost weight. So because it was like a Japanese large, so I lost weight, and it was like too big on me, and I couldn't really repurpose it, so I sold it on Grailed, and I knew the retail price, and I just put like an astronomical price, thinking like, okay, then I'll clearance it down, and then somebody will like jump on it. I think within 6 hours, somebody jumped on the astronomical price, and it paid for my plane tickets to and from Vegas at the time.
Wow!
Like, so it's just like, yeah, that is like, I didn't think about that, but that is a very good point. Is that, and that's not something that I necessarily see on the feminine side, but like I do know dudes who will be like, okay, I'm gonna buy this, but I know I can either like use this piece in a trade, or I can like flip it later on, and I know I'm gonna get some of my money. So it's like, it's the idea of the investment piece, but like in a very weird way. Not the investment piece I'm gonna hand down or keep in my closet, but like investment, like, oh, I'm actually gonna make money on this.
And it's funny that you said that, because Dion told us like months ago that is his thinking, and I was like, is that really how men shop? And then you just echoed
I can't speak
that.
for everybody, but
so.
like I mean, I'm definitely part of that. Like as far as that line of thinking goes, So Dion knows me well enough, I guess.
And well, that's he knows you, and he knows a lot of because we like really narrowed down the market too, because we're like, who would be coming in here? Like, what men are coming in here to shop? Men coming in with their girlfriends, because that's the most of the men that come in here are coming in for their girlfriend shopping. And then men that are into fashion and men that are into buying like stylish fashion. And those men usually are looking to resell it.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to kind of break down the market.
And
We're learning so much.
Speaking of people that you learned from and helped you, who is Brie Roche Lilliot?
Yes. Brie is our partner for our clothing swaps.
Yep.
And she's also a partner of ours who sells, she has her own vintage business.
Out in Brooklyn, right?
Out of Brooklyn. She was somebody we met who also just moved to Providence right when we were starting. And we just became friends with her, and she has a great vintage style. She's like very into vintage pieces. So we also sell her Siren and Saint vintage pieces here.
Yeah. She was the third woman who came and toured the space with us, and Danielle and I were like, we're hungry, we're going for it. And she was like, I
just moved here, I just met you.
Yeah, she was like, I just moved here, I just met you. I'll help you guys, but I'm not signing a lease.
I feel like we have a big like behind the scenes team of Renaissance women who are just like our friends who just also love this lifestyle and love secondhand, love vintage. And Brie's one of those people who runs our clothing swaps, does her own vintage business, and she also writes blogs for us.
Yeah, and she and her husband, that's my dog Harold, if you heard that. He's feeling really left out.
I mean, we've had cats interrupt the show before, so now that having a dog, we're just evening it out.
But Brie and her husband Zeus, they have helped us. They've
literally everything.
They've done so much for us, and they've also, for like different parties that they've had, they put together these amazing like spreads of meat and cheeses. And
if you need a cheese board, hit them up.
But they've, in any possible way that you can collaborate and help us out, they've done everything with us.
So you both started this spot in August, and then you were even mentioning earlier, like, I think it was maybe like 6 months later, like you made the money back and started turning a profit, which is phenomenal. That's amazing. Like, you know, that, I don't want to say like that's that normally that you're an outlier, but like that's not like the everyday.
No.
Yeah. Also, I feel like when you look at our space, you think that it may have cost a lot more for us to get this up and running than it actually did. But we're both very scrappy.
We're very scrappy.
And so I wanted to ask, like, what do you think contributed to like almost like a meteoric rise?
Oh.
Like so quickly.
Oh.
Because I'm looking at the site, I'm looking at like even like the social medias and like how many fans you have, and the fact that like, and then when I read like, oh, they were able to turn on a profit in 6 months, like that's, I don't care what industry you're in, like the fact that you were able to do that, and your first events were selling out too. So like that's, so not even just the money aspect, but like the social community aspect, and that currency.
No, I think a lot of people just
quickly too.
I think we hit the perfect time again in the pandemic of people were coming out for this, like end of summer. It was right when everyone, like there wasn't as many COVID restrictions, and a lot of people were just in their houses for the past year and a half looking for some type of like community close to home. And that's what we've heard. A lot of people that come to our events, a lot of people come by themselves, which I love. Like I love doing stuff by myself, but I know it's really hard for a lot of people. And a lot of people are like, I've seen your community. I wanted to make new friends. I bought this ticket to come here and meet new people, which I'm like, that's wonderful. And they continue coming back because we have such wonderful times together.
Yeah. And I think for us, we're offering a lot more than just sales. Through the Nest, I still offer professional organizing services, so I'll work with people one-on-one to do that. We offer workshops and events, and through that, I think the community feels that they have a part in this as well, like they are a part of this, which is amazing, because something that we felt was like a mantra of ours while we were starting this was collaboration over competition. Always. There's so many people in the industry, and like I said before, we're not the ones who first started reselling for the first time, but I think we opened our doors and wanted everyone to be a part of it and everyone to be able to showcase their skill or their work through the space. It's not just about us. It's about the long-term vision and what we're trying to accomplish, which is more sustainable shopping, connecting with community, keep things trading and circulating within the community, and then ultimately just like consuming less and more conscious consumerism. Yep.
And, you know, speaking of that, the events, because I've seen some of the other events, like you've had a comedy night, you've had workshops, you've had, I think tonight there's going to be like an oyster shucking night.
Yeah.
Okay, oyster shucking and vintage, like, you know, clothing or like vintage housewares would not be something I would put together, nor would I put in, you know, stand-up comedy night. Like I would not think like, oh, hey, where are you playing? Oh, I'm playing at this clothing store. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What are what do you mean you're playing at, why aren't you at a comedy club? So,
Every single comedy show, someone
Yeah.
makes some comment about how they're in this like weird thrift store next to a trailer park.
yeah, yeah. That sounds like the beginning of a bit, to be honest with you.
We're setting them up. Also, the naked women on the walls,
Yeah,
too.
and it's a good backdrop. If like put a mic in front of that, you're like, here you
that's
go,
the backdrop.
here you go.
Yeah.
So why there are certain events that I saw on the calendar that I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then there are ones that are like completely out of left field. How do you like tie like what makes you want to do these left field or like not really adjacent to fashion events, and how do you tie them all together? Is it just you were saying before it's stuff I would want to go? Is it just purely that, or is it like other things, like, or people like, it'd be funny, or do people come with you with random ideas and you're like, oh, let's try it out?
The comedy show is just great exposure for us because it's people who wouldn't necessarily find us on their own who are now aware that we exist.
Yeah.
And we also have this huge, big, beautiful space that we want to share it with people. So that was kind of like a no-brainer with the comedy show.
One of the things with all of our new events I always think back to, it's like always thinking back to your mission, is yes, we sell secondhand and vintage, but the next like sustainable thing is keeping things in the community and uplifting your local community. So with the oyster shucking event tonight, like we're partnered with a local small business who is a seafood shop in
Bristol.
But it's like that goes with our mission of exposing other local small businesses so that people can shop with them and be a part of their community rather than going to some big corporate business.
Yeah.
So with like the comedy shows as well, all those, we're very into uplifting artists and makers, and I'm like, comedians are artists, like they're all local, why not give them a space here to be able to reach a local community?
Is that why you decided to do workshops as well? And can you talk about like some of the workshops and how those tie in?
The workshops are pushing more of our education. So our biggest thing, I think, above everything else is educating people. And that's what we do.
I think your dog agrees.
Oh,
Yes,
Harold
thank
is
you, Harold.
so sad over there and feeling left out. Sorry, buddy.
We like to educate people on sustainability and kind of bringing people back to their craft. Our first workshop we ever did was a resin, like make your own earring, like make your own resin pour
pouring,
workshop. Just because a friend of ours was doing that. We were like, why not try it? And we found a lot of people that came after were just like, I feel like I'm kind of like reverting back to my childhood. I feel like happy. I was able to do things with my hands after working on a computer all day. Like it wasn't something I'm used to normally doing. And now I have this new skill.
Yeah.
So we're very into helping people like build up skills they've always wanted to do to be able to make things on their own, like patch their own clothing, learn how to knit, and learn how to create new things on their own rather than going somewhere and buying it unsustainably.
Curiosity and also feeling empowered to figure out how to do it yourself instead of paying a big
And that goes back
corporation.
to our push of like slow fashion and slow things. It might not give you that instant gratification of having it, but you did it yourself and you're able to say, I patched this hole in my jeans because I learned how to, and now I get to wear them every day and feel proud of that.
One thing I loved after our resin workshop too, some of the feedback is this one girl was like, I almost didn't come because I was feeling so stressed out from my day and I just like didn't even want to go out or do anything, but I showed up and I completely like checked out, forgot what I was stressed out about, connected with my creativity, felt like a child again, like just really got out of her own head in her own way and was able to like let go and relax. And I loved hearing that.
Yep.
And another thing I've noticed, because you're doing all these events, you're doing these workshops, and we have this like very, very curated showroom here, but if you look at the door when you come in, it says appointment only.
Yeah.
Was that an idea from the get-go, like, hey, we're going to be appointment only, we're not going to have the shop just open on certain days, or it's like it's not going to be event oriented? Why that decision? Is that going to change down the road, or?
Yeah.
So originally, like this goes back to our storage space, like idea of we were going to have our own physical space. It was going to be kind of like a showroom, storage room where we'd be able to take pictures and sell most things online. So originally this was going to be like our workspace of selling things online. And then we were like, let's hold events. So it would be by appointment only shopping, open for events, and then buy things online. Slowly that turned into being open every Monday evening. Just because of our schedules, we were still like, we just opened the business. We were still trying to figure out like what worked for just like all of our back end operations and when we can be open as a store. Cause Charlotte and I are pretty much the only full-time employees. We have some interns, but like when we're here and open, like, and we're here every day, and when we're open, we're here. But we had a big pull from the community to be like, we want you guys open more. So
Yeah.
now we're open every
We're
weekend.
trying to be open more. We are physically open more. And I think that's what's so cool about small business and being the owners as well, is we can try things out, and if it doesn't stick, then we can just shift and adjust. But very much like our hours and us progressing to be open physically more, just for like public open shopping hours, is really just a testament to like how quickly the Nest came together. Like we really were conceptualizing it as we were building it, and we opened in like 3 months from signing our lease. And so we've just been like shifting and adjusting, and it's really exciting.
One thing we wanted to talk about, like our e-commerce site. We launched that right after right in the new year.
I was gonna say, took the words out of my mouth, like, because you had that in mind, but was
Yes.
it happening concurrently, or was that launched after the fact? And what
We
was that
always
like?
knew we were always going to do it. That was
e-commerce.
always there. We actually expedited the process because so many people were like, we want to shop online. And you were able to shop me and Charlotte's individual brands online before we started the Nest. So we shut that down. And I think a lot of like our customers were like, why can't we shop with you anymore? We were so focused on opening this physical space. But we expedited the e-commerce website by 3 months, I think, got it done. Pretty much closed down over the holidays, and we both went home for the holidays, but we were just working on the website the whole time from our respective places.
And there's still a lot of products, but I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's every
No.
product in
No.
here.
Oh
because
my God.
it'd take
We
forever.
have so much
don't
more
know
in
how-
store than we do
Every
online.
item in here is individual.
Yeah.
So like when you think of e-commerce sites for other stores, like you're able to put in one description, put 50 as your quantity, and you're able to sell that.
Yeah.
We have to do each individual product.
And do you come up with the copy and description for each individual
Yes.
product?
Yeah.
So that's something, I think this week was the first time we looked at each other. We're like, whoa, we got down like
I know.
this feels good. Like our operations of being able to put things on a website, it went so smoothly this week. Like, let's do it again next week. We've been doing a lot of trial and error on it.
It's been a lot of learning and growing for both of us. And I feel that we're getting to a place where we know what we have to do.
Yes.
Where at first we knew we wanted to launch e-commerce because, especially in the pandemic, what we learned is there needs to be a channel for us to be able to make money, even if we can't be physically open. So e-commerce was always something we wanted to do. And
It's like you said, fashion's 24/7.
yeah. And for small business, it's like you need to make money to stay open.
Yeah.
And so when we first opened, we were thinking of doing like in tandem, launching e-commerce and opening our physical store, but one that's just so much work for it to all happen together. And we also felt like, why would we be putting so much effort in the design of building out this beautiful like in-person experience for people to then just give them an option to go online? So we wanted to push out e-commerce
we wanted
for
to
a little
create
bit.
a community
We wanted to
first.
create a community first. We wanted there to be a reason for them to visit us in person before we give them an avenue to visit us online.
Yeah, which has worked wonderfully.
Were you doing the e-commerce yourselves, and are you still doing it yourselves?
Yes, it's
as far as, like,
everything that you see
Okay.
Is us.
we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought e-commerce up, because a lot of people are always like, why aren't you open more? Like, what are you doing? Like, people will be like, we'll come on the weekend unless like I can make an appointment during the week if you're there. And me and Charlotte are like, we're here all the time. We're working on sourcing things and cleaning things.
Yeah.
Like right after I get off this podcast, I'm going to go clean a chair for a photo shoot.
Yeah.
And also uploading
taking
things
the
online.
pictures, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
our big thing of like, do we open and
Not all the pictures,
push-
Renee. I don't want Renee to hear
oh,
that.
not all the pictures.
No. We work with a photographer who's amazing. She does all of our like editorial photo shoots, and she's so talented. But yeah, it's a lot of work. And I think it's funny to talk about this with friends. We have friends locally who are small business owners as well. And I think when you see anything on the front end, whether it be a website or just social media in general, your social media presence, I don't think the viewer really understands how much time
on the
goes
back end.
into actually executing and delivering that. It's not just like we snapped a picture and we uploaded it. There's like so much that goes into everything. And so we're finally at a place where we have 3 interns that we've onboarded, and we're really establishing their roles and what they're going to do. And so we're currently training one of our interns to be able to run the store. And so we can start hopefully being open more physically, and then also
taking some days off.
and then taking some days off as well. For me, I'm like, more work.
And besides the e-commerce, the events, and the store itself, are there other parts of the business that maybe people don't know about that generate revenue? Like, do you source for other people? Are you like personal stylists for anybody or anything like
So
that?
we
Two
rent,
things, yes.
yeah.
We
so
rent
we
out the
rent the
space.
space for. You can rent.
and the pop-ups. Like if you have
Yes.
your own thing. You could do a pop-up
Yeah,
here
you can
and rent
pop
it
up here
out.
on the weekends while we're open and sell your own things. We rent our space for photo shoots, video shoots. So we have people come in and they are able to use the nest in all of our inventory. We rent our clothing to photographers and stylists as well. We originally, when we started, we put one of our services as like being stylists. And we haven't really gotten to that point yet because I think we've just been focusing on all these other avenues. But we have photographers and people come in here a lot that are like, we will use
These other avenues, did you have those ideas in mind, or would people come to you and be like, hey, I'd like to shoot a thing here? It's like, oh, that's a way I can make money.
That was something that we had talked about really early on because we're talking originally this was just going to be like a studio space and a storage unit. And so we're like, how else could we make money off of this space? And so renting it out to other people was an idea. We're on Peer Space. It's like a hourly, it's sort of like an Airbnb, but for hourly rentals instead of like per night rentals. So we're on Peer Space. You can rent our space. Oh my God, Harold is so sad.
Harold's advertising that you're
Harold
on.
is
on
so
Peer Space.
sad. Oh my God, he's crying. So we're on Peer Space. You can rent out the nest for your own like photo shoot.
Dog's
and
fine,
whatnot.
everybody.
The
By
dog
the way,
is
in case you're wondering,
fine.
like the dog is just.
He just wants attention.
No, he's a prince. Yeah, he just wants attention. Oh my God.
So other revenue streams and other ideas.
Yes.
You talk about how you were on Peer Space and how you had other ways of making money from the space.
Yes, we talk about rentals. So
Yeah.
we rent the space. And then the other one is Charlotte's professional organizing.
Yes. Yep. So we offer professional. Oh gosh. Now Harold's wreaking havoc over here.
Last time we had a cat, now we got a dog.
Yeah, so I'm a professional organizer, and that is something that we also offer through the Nest is professional organizing. And I think that's something that people don't know that we offer or see that is happening. We're working on marketing it more. There's a whole marketing strategy and stuff. But behind the scenes. But yeah, so I would say front facing people just see that we do events and sell secondhand, but then we also do space rentals here at the Nest, and I also offer professional organizing services and decluttering. Yeah.
And so one thing I've noticed that you've both have been saying this entire time, and I definitely want to ask about, is this fact that you're very community oriented, right? Mm-hmm. And you're talking about the events and like the people you work with, and now you've got interns, and even like looking at the website, there's like a huge team of like people you source with that you work with.
Our collective.
Can you go through how you built up the collective, like how you built up that community? Were you reaching out to people? Were people reaching out to you? And is there like a criteria of like, or like just mental notes you take of like, yeah, this is the qualities we need in an intern, or these are the qualities we need as far as a local partner to work with. These are the qualities we need as somebody who works with us when it comes to sourcing. Or even like the consultants you work with for like the menswear part.
Mm-hmm. We have been so lucky that everything that we have needed, like for our partnered seamstress, or any of our like consultants that have come through, they have walked through our door after seeing us on social media or hearing about us and being like, I want to be a part of this community. And like that, the first thing, just like showing up and being here is such a, like, we take note of it. I'm like, for you to take time out of your day to come in and talk with us about what we're doing, that's already kind of like a first step into like creating a relationship with somebody. And we just have a lot of conversations with anyone. I think on like the operations side of that, it is also making sure that those relationships of the collective like are under a contract. That's like once we get to a point as that we know what we want to do. That was going to be my next question.
Was like you try write up contracts and like
and we do a lot of
we're responsible for this. They're responsible for that. Is how much you get
and
paid.
I've learned that that's like the best way because it's like it holds everyone accountable of what
it's just in writing. That's it. It's like we'll refer to the contract.
And if anything goes down, you're just like, well, that's what the contract says. So.
Do you make those yourself, or do you have like a lawyer you work with?
We make them.
We make them.
Yeah. We have templates, and then we just update them.
I remember over the summer we had to write our very first contract, and we were sitting over. I don't think we actually had this sectional yet, but we were sitting over here, and we were just sitting on the computer, and we we're like, I think this sounds good, and I think that sounds legit. like one thing that we learned opening up this space is most of it is just made up. It really
when
is.
you start your own business,
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of people like you do this, you do this, you do that, you do that, and then you do that, and then you open, and then you
Yeah.
sell stuff. And it's like it's not like that at all, which is so funny. Like there is certain things you have to do, but like a lot of it you just have to make up out of nothing
Yeah.
and just complete it and get it done.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because like, what are the things? Because you're talking about like, oh, we do the website, like we have to work on our marketing and do our own marketing. What are the things that maybe you don't want people to see? Who knows? But like, what are the things that people don't see that are happening in the background, business wise, like making contracts, like how you find and source items again, because it's not this like you will do A through Z and then make then it's like step 1. Find this. Step 2, step 3, profit. Like, it's not like the South Park Underpants gnomes where it's just like magically you get profit. It's not like a step-by-step system.
Yeah.
What are the things that happen behind the scenes that maybe you feel like people don't know about that would make, like, if they did, to be like, oh, that'd be a different perception. Like, wow, they had to do all this craziness.
I think it's just like a mundane stuff. I think like 2
But the
days.
mundane is probably helpful, so that's why I'm asking it.
2 days out of our week, like if you come in here, you'll probably see me sitting staring at a computer screen all day, and it's doing accounting, and it's balancing our books, and it's writing grants. One of the big things I do on a monthly basis is we have to pay out. We have some consigners here, so at the end of the month, you have to run through all the sales and
gotta keep track of it.
Keep track, and you have to go through with what percentages and pay people out and make sure that it works with their contracts. And it's a lot of like contracting, payouts and emails.
Yeah, it's a lot of planning for the months ahead of what we're going to put out there when it comes to like coordinating events, all the communication and like ideation that goes into that, graphics for social media, content shoots to be able to market these events that we're doing, going out there, sourcing all of these items, making sure that we have new product coming in, like people will want to keep shopping with us, filling empty holes, actually pricing, skewing, doing the research to put that out there.
I was gonna say, like finding gaps within the business. Like it probably took you some time to figure out that, like, oh, more masculine clothing was a gap, and it's like formulating the plan on how you're gonna attack that.
Harold, come here. Oh God. He's not allowed on the furniture.
He can be on the furniture for today.
Just lie down.
Yes, a lot. I think one thing too is all the events you see us. So I went to school for like event management, which is so funny because now that I'm like, when you're in school learning that, like I learn by like doing. So now that I'm doing all these events, I'm like, okay, like now I understand like what we need to do. It makes more sense. And I think people don't understand how much work it takes to put on one event and then also be present like there as a host for an event. We've gotten our events down to like when we first opened, we were spending a lot of time to do that. But we've gotten it to a point where now like we just drop our event schedule at the beginning of the month. We don't have to worry about pretty much marketing events anymore because our events pretty much sell out just from dropping that schedule, which has been a blessing. Like thank you to our community for being there to help us do that. And also our time spent has gone way, way, way down because it's just kind of regurgitating those events just with a different topic or a different focus.
And what's been great too, when we first started, we put out before our grand opening, we put out an initial call for collaboration because we wanted to see if anyone would be open to collaborating with us. And we had such an overwhelming response that we had to shut down that page because so many people were reaching out to collaborate. We couldn't keep up with reading all of the applications and getting back to people. And so for us, it's just been so rewarding knowing that we don't have to like be knocking down people's doors. It's happened really organically. It's happened really organically.
I was gonna say, it doesn't seem like all right, we got to do X, Y, and Z to build the brand. It was like the brand and the store and everything was building organically on their own.
But I think that's the best type of brand is being just authentic and being yourself, and that's what.
I think for us, we're just like, this is what we're trying to do. Anyone else like this?
Being open. At times when we start a new business or a new project, we focus so much on what we think that business or project should be that we become closed off to new ideas and possibly even new revenue streams. Charlotte and Danielle originally thought the Nest was going to be a booth, and then they were open to the idea of having a storage unit. Then after taking a tour of a space, they were open to having it being a full-on showroom. But things didn't stop there. They were open to collaboration over competition, to having events that don't exactly align with clothing, like oyster shucking and stand-up comedy nights. They were open to letting others use the space, and open to the idea of providing additional services like wardrobe organizing and tailoring. All of this has led to new revenue streams, new members joining the Nest community, and creative and financial success. So, be like Charlotte and Danielle, and be open. Be open to new ideas, be open to new ways of thinking, and be open to new possibilities. What pain points do you have with the business currently that you're like, oh, I wish this would go away, or I wish this would be better?
Right now, I think we reinvested into e-commerce, and it's the pain point right now is getting our e-commerce set up to a point that we can start doing more marketing and paid ads. And that's like right now, I think every day our biggest conversation and like that pain point is like, what do we do next? Like, do we need to focus on more inventory? Do we need to focus on marketing? Do we have to bring somebody in that knows more about
And how do you
online
track
paid
all that stuff
marketing?
to even be able to find the gaps of what you need to be doing as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, learning more about SEO so that our website actually
We've
pops
been
up for
taking
people
classes.
more. Yeah, we did a virtual workshop about SEO. One of my personal pain points is there is an alarm in the building that we have no control over that goes off
Oh, I saw the sign on the door.
sporadically.
It's like, if it just goes off, please don't freak out.
Yes, I made that sign because Danielle, there'd be times where like she would come in and I have like a puss on my face and she's like, what's up? I was like, the alarm's going off again. She's like, I didn't even notice. Like, it is such like a me, I have a vendetta against that alarm, but it's just, that is one of my biggest pain points. Things that we have no control over.
I think, yes. I think it's just, to me, I'm like really building up our e-commerce brand. And then also, obviously, we learn in the retail space, right after the holidays is the like lowest point of people shopping. Not as many people shop right now because you just did all your shopping over the holidays. So we're kind of in that lull, and we're trying to figure, like, filling our time is like, what is the best things we can do now while our retail sales are going down to prepare for the summer when they're going to be up.
And also, I would think like just dealing with like rule changing and like, you know, we're in the time of COVID and like 1 week it's like mask mandates, the next week it's not mask mandates, or it's like, hey, for online sales, you have to collect taxes from the state that it's originating from, and like all these other things. So like, is there other stuff like that you, like, were there business things, or maybe it's even just like, hey, we're going to make an LLC or an incorporated, were there business things that you ran into that you completely didn't expect? You're like, oh, this is the thing we have to deal with.
I think I had a pretty good, just with my background in working with startups, like I had a pretty good idea of like the framework of the things we're gonna have to run into. The surprising thing, I think, is how things change, or like there's one little thing that's different in that kind of like operations or like accounting that just like I don't know how to do that, so it messes up actually completing that task and understanding like where to go to get help for that. And I would say Rhode Island has a great network of like mentors and advisors. The Rhode Island Small Business Administration has been like such a resource. Growth Lab is like consultants that we pay on an hourly basis if we need accounting help. And I'm very into like just using the connections you have and know to be able to talk with people about how to kind of fix those problems. And we still do it all ourselves, but at least having someone there and being like, this is kind of what you need to do. Now go do it. It just makes it feel better to actually go and do it.
Streamlines things a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And I
there's
think
a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error, and a lot of learning for us, because it's not just that we're making money through sales or just through events. There's all of these different channels, like revenue channels. And I think us figuring out how to like organize all of that, what is tax, what's not.
The taxes are so hard. Like every day me and Charlotte was like, what? Like what?
We need we need to like print out a sheet as like a reminder. What's taxed?
Something I've noticed, like on the site, is one of the first things I noticed when I looked at it was like, hey, we have this collection of pieces, and it would have a theme, and it's like shop the drop now. That's something that I've seen when it comes to like new clothes or certain brands, or even from like the streetwear space of like the drop system. Like, all right, we have drop, and then like collections, but you don't necessarily think of, and like I think maybe not the first, but you're one of like the first place I've seen when it comes to like vintage thrift secondhand, where you're presenting things as a cohesive collection, not every item, but certain items, and like kind of giving those items like a cohesive backstory and things like that. And again, I've seen these other spaces like Grailed and others. Was that an influence from like other parts of the fashion industry? Because I think that's pretty unique. And what other parts of the industry are on your radar? Like, eventually menswear, like are things like sneakers and streetwear on your radar? Like, do you just like see other things going on? It's like, oh, like we can incorporate that somehow.
With the drop, so going back to like Charlotte's professional organizing, one of the like principles is giving everything in your space a personality, a life, and a story. And that's something we've wanted to share through like what we're selling. Like we want people, if you come into the store and you ask about certain things, we will tell you as much as we know about it, of where things come from. We have pieces in here that have come out of the studio of the Gerber baby illustrator.
Yeah.
And we can tell you all about that. And then you can bring that into your home. And I think that's with the drops as well. It's also like marketing. We see what people like and know. We just did a Euphoria drop because it's personally, me and Charlotte and a lot of our people in our community, that's what they're talking about and that's what they love. Why not theme something that we have in the store to be able to be like, oh, this is what we would wear if we were in Euphoria.
Yeah. I love that Euphoria drop too, because a lot of that style feels very fast fashion-y. And so for us to be able to curate a collection of secondhand and like upcycled pieces that could fit that general aesthetic, that was really fun for us.
Yes.
But yeah, what Danielle was saying, in professional organizing through the KonMari method, it really is all about seeing your personal belongings as more than just this inanimate object. It has a soul. There is like a mutual relationship between you and it. It is giving something to you just as much as you are like holding it and keeping it. Like it is. Clothing is like protecting you from the elements and expressing your style. And so when you learn the backstory and see it more as this disposable item that's in your life for just as long as you want it to be, and you start respecting it a little bit more, that's where I think we differentiate ourselves a little bit more. It's not just disposable. It's like something that was manufactured for a purpose, and you should treat it. You should take care of it. You should try to make it last as long as you possibly can. And then be thoughtful in the way that you're discarding it. Yeah.
And in terms of like going into other like streetwear, going into sneakers or whatever else.
Yeah. Like, do you go out and research like other areas of the fashion world, or like are certain things on your radar or not?
I mean, they're on our radar at this point. It's, I think, things that are coming to us. So like with the menswear, like it was like we saw an opportunity there because so many people said that they wanted that from us. So we moved into that. There probably will be at some point other like avenues that one of us is going to come to and be like, I see a lot of opportunity. I don't know off the top of my head right now what that could be.
Not saying that we're doing this, but 2 times in this past week, we've heard from people about secondhand children's clothes.
Yeah.
And is that something that you would ever do? And I was like, well, we haven't really thought about it. And we didn't know if we had a market for it. But now 2 people in the same week.
And we started research. We did start researching on it. And there's not a lot of like resources for people to do secondhand children's clothes and children's items. Even though that's a huge investment a lot of people have in their
it's
life.
a huge investment for something that your kid's going to fit into for not that long. But yeah, so I think that's what's so great about being a small business and us two at the helm as well, is if there is an opportunity that presents itself, or a market that we think there's an opportunity in, like we can just go for it.
Speaking of, when it comes to fashion, whether it's fast fashion, whether it's luxury, right? Styles, and because it's very like I want it now, styles, and we're not even on trends now. We're on micro trends.
Yeah.
Does that ever concern you? Has that ever been a pain point for you? Like you're talking about, like, hey, we did the Euphoria collection because like that's what's being talked about right now. But at some point, that show won't be talked about. So, do you ever worry about that, or is it because you're a small business and you're nimble, and because your products are diversified, or is it because you're trying to get a specific aesthetic that? So does that ever come up as like a concern?
I don't think so, because I think our whole business model is to push back at those trends and micro trends, because it goes back to authenticity that we're trying to push, not push, but just like trying to help people reach of wear what makes you feel good. And we have all these options of things that we think is stylish. And we like, if you go through our clothes, like it ranges from like way different types of styles. So yes, there's things like Charlotte and I will be like, this is trending right now. This is what we love, but that's not something we want to push on you. We just want to let you know that we think that it's cool and we think that it looks good, and that's what we're wearing. If you decide to or not wear it, do that. But we want people to buy and wear things that make them feel good, because that's trendy.
And also educating people and exposing that, one, micro trends is just a marketing tactic from these fashion companies trying to get you to buy more, because a micro trend goes out of season, goes out of style in like 2 to 3 months. And also, fashion, there's a history to fashion. It's been around for years, and some of the trends that you're seeing today was actually invented years ago, if not centuries ago. Like, things do repeat, like history repeats itself, fashion recycles. So the trends that you're seeing today, you can accomplish that and find it from secondhand items. It doesn't need to be brand new to be in style necessarily, or to be on trend.
So one thing I've noticed, and I don't know if you agree or disagree or if you're seeing the same thing, is that secondhand, I'm coming from more of like streetwear, sneakers, even like hype space, but then there's like sites like Grailed, it's more on the guys' end of things or more on the masculine side of things, but like Grailed, where you can go find like, mall brands, but you can go find high-end brands, and Grailed is a multi-million-dollar company. You have StockX, multi-million, GOAT, which just I think the group that owns Foot Locker like bought GOAT. So like the either flipping clothes or like selling secondhand has now become like it's become multi-million-dollar. There's sites like Depop. I saw Etsy with like I never thought I would see commercials for Etsy, and not just like, hey, we're Etsy, but like these like slick like ads you could see on TV for Etsy. I never thought I'd see that. You know what I mean? Like, and now some of the brands are taking notice, where I forgot what luxury brand is now doing like they're selling their sample stuff, or they're doing a buyback program. I remember APC with their denim would like buy an old pair. I don't know if they're still doing this. They would buy an old pair of denim from you, but then they'd flip it for $500 and like you get not even a free new pair, a discounted new pair. And I'm like, why don't I just keep the old pair, since you're gonna flip it for money anyway, And now you have sites like The Real. I've seen like things like that, and like eBay is getting into the sneaker authentication game, and they put money into that. Do you think that that's good, bad? Do you think it's going to go in a certain direction? Because I'm also seeing like some of these bigger brands going after resales, like on some weird copyright infringement laws, but like the way they pick who they go after, there's not much of a rhyme or reason. Or going after clothing customizers, saying like, you don't have the right, but again, they go after certain people. So apparently at some point, these bigger brands, whether they're fast fashion, luxury, whatever, figured out, and I think maybe you're going to see more of it. Oh, there's money in the flip now.
Yeah.
There's money in the resale. There's money in the thrift. Oh, we can just do it at scale. And we've already got the brand recognition. We can do that. Is that, do you thinking yes? Or are you thinking, oh crap, is it good, bad, and different? What are your thoughts on that? That like now it's like, it's become big business, and with big business becomes eyeballs.
I honestly think that if upcycling was taken on like a larger, more corporate scale, that is a really positive thing. I see that a lot of the toxicity of the industry in general is the overproduction. There's just so much new material being produced every single year that if companies are then slashing the new production and then investing more into upcycling and remaking and redoing products that were like returned to them, like making it new again or making it something different, the reuse of material, especially if that was done on a corporate level, I see that as a really positive thing. Yeah. Maybe it'll run us out of business, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. But, I like Charlotte and I's and the Nest's personal mission, like a business mission, is to educate people on how to live more sustainably so that we can stop impacting the earth in such a bad way as we have. So if these big companies are taking that over, again, I would be happy as well, because that's kind of like we'd have some part in moving these big companies into focusing on something that actually matters, that is going to impact everybody and the earth in general.
Do you see when a big company does that as like lip service, or it's like, well, now it's just because it's trendy?
Yeah.
Like, do you also like, does that, like, maybe not like the styles that you do become trendy, but the idea of like, because like secondhand is having its moment.
Yes.
Like I've never seen more people selling old t-shirts and stuff on Depop, and like, you know, and I'm not saying that they're not doing it for the secondhand. Maybe they really are into that thing, but you have to think, all right, just from a sheer numbers perspective, all these new people onboarding, they're just like, hey, it's a hustle. Like, it's a hustle to make money. Does that ever concern you that at some point, you know, it may drop off, and then like these companies that are like, oh, we're getting into it, and like that's back to business as normal. They just wanted to ride the wave, or that people are like riding the wave, whether it's buying or selling, because like it's hip and it's trendy right now to do that. Like, whereas it may fall out of favor again.
I think it is hip and trendy, but it's also one of those, like, it's a trend where like I don't think we're gonna revert back. I think we can only build up at this point because of the impact of selling secondhand and shopping and buying secondhand.
The example that I like to use is the idea of like organic grocery shopping and eating organically. 10 years ago, there weren't even organic sections in the grocery store, but then that documentary Food Inc. came out and everyone saw sort of a peek behind the curtain of how the food is actually made and delivered to you, and they were shocked and disgusted. And I think we're on the frontier of people realizing how horribly toxic the fashion industry is, and wanting to be more intentional about how they shop. And so all of these secondhand resellers are popping up around because it's the same sort of thing it's the same sort of thing as like an organic food section. Yeah, it's just like now being more aware of the toxicity of that specific industry and wanting to shift the way that you consume.
Yeah. And now, look, most grocery stores have organic sessions. Yeah. It's not a trend anymore, but it's been built into such a part of everybody's
part of
lifestyle.
Now. Yeah.
Do you think it could get to a point, because like when a trend or when people see a hustle, then they, you know, not a lot of people, but they see something that exploit, where it's just like, oh, that like 2 years ago you could get, like, I'll just throw a random item out, like this dress from this fashion maker, you know, 2 years ago was like $40-$50, but now that this is a trend, all like they're, you know, like anybody reselling, everybody doing vintage or thrift, oh, now it's $300-$400 and it's locking people out. And because you're so community focused, like do you ever see that going on and go like, oh, how do we combat this? Not and like obviously you're not doing it, but I'm like, I wonder like if you ever see that, whether you've seen stuff online or stuff.
It's funny how things become trendy and then don't, and then it's gone.
I don't know exactly how to answer that. I could give like an example of like we've had some clothes in here that we've priced on the higher side because we have buyers that we know would pay that. Like that's the market right now. But a week later, there could be an excess of that, and all of a sudden we can't charge that much anymore. It moves so fast, so what you can charge, like what people will pay for trends. And that's something I think like I subconsciously watch is like when I first started reselling like wicker furniture, I could get for $60, I could flip it for $400 for a shelf. Now, 4 months later, like wicker's out and you can't do that. But there's other things that you can focus on, but it's just knowing what people want to buy at that point.
And what I think is crazy is like if you want to go like buy like, I don't know, like a vintage t-shirt from like X band, it'll cost like 20-30 times the reproduction vintage t-shirt that you can get from like Target for the same brand. So it's like does that ever mess with you, where you're just like, it's supposed to be this way, but then can you blame somebody who's just like, I just want this vintage Beastie Boys t-shirt and I don't want to pay like $300, and I can go to like brand X and it's new and it's fast fashion, but I'll pay 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, because like I wonder if that's like, if that has to be like if I was in vintage, like, that'd be like a weird like conundrum. Like, how do you like, how do you like, is that a problem that can even be solved, or is it just like, it'll be a trend, it'll go away, and then the price will go up and down? Because it seems like the stock market almost.
Yeah.
That you're just like seeing certain things rise and fall, and you're like, oh, this is hot. Like, oh crap, all right.
I mean, I think that will always sort of exist within vintage reselling in general. Things sort of like flex and go in and out of style, especially with TikTok and different trends. What makes people feel nostalgic is like constantly changing. Like I think Hello Kitty had a moment where she came back,
early
and like
2000s
Polly
is
Pockets, you could resell them.
nostalgic,
Yeah, it's all very nostalgic, and it does fly very quickly.
Yes.
But I think that will never go away because we are constantly producing things, and so anything is technically vintage if it's over 20 years old. And so technically things that were manufactured in like 2002 are vintage now.
And it's funny how things in 2002, like what was vintage then and like having a resurgence was 20 years. But so it's almost like a 20-year cycle, like 20 to 30-year cycle, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Totally. I've been seeing a lot of content online of like Target and Walmart like really leaning into like the Y2K style.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been seeing that.
But it's like produced
Yeah.
now, so
Yeah.
it looks like it's from 2022.
Yeah, and to that point of you saying like things are priced high when they are in like that vintage demand, it's just the difference of if you actually want the authentic original version,
Versus you just
or
want
if
the
you just
look
want
and
if
the
you just want the
aesthetic.
look and then you can go buy it new. Like we have one of those hand chairs here. We have an orange hand chair over there, and they've been replicated a bunch of times over, so you can go out and find it. But the one that we have here is like real authentic from like what, the 70s or 80s, and so it's priced a little bit higher because it is the original
kind.
version.
And I think a lot of people, like even our friends, Charlotte and I, like will go shopping at fast fashion, come back and be like, I want to show you what I bought, but like it's all
I feel bad.
I feel bad. And we're like, we're not here to make you feel bad. Like you make it's your life. Like you make your decisions, you buy and support who you want to support from. Like, yes, it would be wonderful to be able to support like people locally or sustainable businesses or sustainable brands. And for example, that hand chair, like if somebody went and was like, this is too expensive, I'm going to go get a replica. I'm like, yes, good for you. But I know that there is somebody out there that respects original design and designers. I never really was in the arts and design industry. I kind of fell into it when I was living here in Providence. And our old landlord at my old job, so he was just our landlord. We were decking out the whole interior of a co-working space, and we were buying like chairs from Wayfair and tables just to fill it up. And our old landlord comes and he goes, these chairs, like these are knockoffs of Herman Miller. And this was like, I didn't know who that was at the time. But he's like, these are knockoffs of Herman Miller. And he like sat us down and he was like, it's fine. But he's like, I want you girls like to live your life and know like somebody created this thing years ago, made it. This was their like property. And now these people go make knockoffs and you're buying it. Like, he's like, just think about that like person, or think about that. Like, imagine if you made something and someone, knocked it off and made replicas. Like, how would you feel?
Yeah.
And that's always something I've put in the back of my mind. I'm like, yes, maybe I can't afford certain things, but like, it feels good to be able to have something that is original. Like that
You're putting the
Grateful Dead
information.
t-shirt.
You're putting the information out there and the options out there. It's somebody if they want to do it, it's not this crazy hunt, and it's it's easier accessibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
and I would say it's the same if you go and try to find, I don't know much about sneaker culture, but if you go and buy the original version of those sneakers, or like luxury handbags, you were going to buy a Chanel handbag, like there are so many different knockoff options out there. If you just wanted the look and you wanted people to think that you're carrying a Chanel handbag, you can do it. You could do it, but for a lot of people, they want the actual real thing, and I think that's what it comes down to.
What advice would you give to anybody who's being an entrepreneur? And what advice would you wish you would have gotten when you started this whole business journey out?
The advice I got, and this is actually something I knew, but I wish someone beat it into me harder, is being more organized, like with like administratively, like financially and administratively, like just keeping up on like making sure like that all your expenses have receipts for them and this and that. Cause I think that a lot of time spent is always like going back at the end of the month and trying to organize that all and be like, I got to find this. I'm missing this. Where is that? I got to
like
pull it from my
organize and
email.
have a process.
Processes and writing everything down. That's another thing. I think I would tell people, write everything you do down. Like even if you don't know if it's a process that you're putting into place yet, like write a little bullet point list of how you're doing that. Because what happens if I can't come to work that day and Charlotte has to do something that's due
the
today?
Information to somebody else.
Exactly. And it works great for when you have employees and interns too, is you have everything written down so you can just give that handbook, you can give that to them and not have to keep training people. It saves so much time.
Yeah. Advice, I would say that if you're scared, me too. yes, it's really, really scary. So if you're like unsure of yourself and scared, know that that is completely valid. And most entrepreneurs are feeling that way. So you're not alone in that. Also, whether you have a business partner, you're going to find a business partner, or just having someone that you trust that you can sound ideas off of, that is so important. One of the hardest things of being an entrepreneur is that all of the decisions fall onto you. There's not a boss that you can just be like, okay, that's your problem. Like every
you're
little
accountable
thing,
for everything.
There's a lot of decisions.
There's so many decisions, and it can be really overwhelming, and you can get in your head, and sometimes you're so close to it that it's hard to kind of take a step back. And so having a business partner, having Danielle has been amazing for that reason, where sometimes like I can be such a perfectionist and it's not good enough. And then Danielle takes a look at it. She's like, "That babe, this is great. Just like,
we got other things
stop.
to do."
Yeah, just stop. So just having someone to bounce ideas off of, or just get like verification, validation on a decision, just having someone that you trust that you can talk to is really important.
Why the name The Nest? And what's in the future for The Nest?
The Nest is, well, not only does it sound adorable and it rolls off the tongue really nicely, but this is also a place where you can come and nest for yourself in your own home. You can find pieces of furniture, homewares, decor, fashion to nest at home. And then also for us, we see ourselves as an incubator for small businesses, whether you want to host a workshop, an event here to showcase your business, or you want to vend with us and sell your wares. We sort of see ourselves as a jumping off point for these small businesses to grow their audience and grow their business.
Yep. And also it worked out so well because we feel like we're in a little nest on the second floor looking over. Yeah, we're perched up looking over
Ogie's Trailer Park.
Providence. You can see the Armory.
Yeah,
you can see downtown.
Yeah, no, you can, especially from a roof too. You can see everything. You can see the Capitol building.
What's in store for the future of The Nest?
Ooh. Oh. I would say we want to do a lot more digital education. Definitely more TikToks and Reels, but not just about like events here, but things about the fashion industry, things about sustainable living that might be a little bit shocking that you didn't know. Like definitely pulling the curtain back a little bit and being a little bit more upfront with that on our digital platforms. More education.
This is far out too, but we do hope to open an actual storefront at some time soon. We use this. We're on the second floor. I think one thing we've learned is moving furniture is hard when you're on the second floor and don't have an elevator. So we would love to open a second location that is specifically for shopping for people to be able to access it when it's not just the weekend.
Yeah, and giving us a shout out, every piece of furniture in here we've moved up ourselves.
Yes.
So it's not just for the people, but also for your backs.
Yeah,
Exactly. Not having future back problems.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but we see one thing that we hear on different sides of the argument. Some people are like, it was kind of hard to find you. And we're like, yeah, it's like exclusive. Like if you know, you know. But then on the other sense, we want to have more we want to be more accessible. We want a storefront where people who are just walking by might wander in.
So I was going to say, even though you're community based, it seems like you want a bigger and bigger and bigger community.
Yes.
Yeah. We're also, we put out a call for new pop-up collaborators. So yes, we have our events, we have our vendors, and now we're opening our Saturdays and Sundays for small businesses that really sells any type of wear to come in on our open hours and be able to showcase for that day or that weekend. Those applications are still open. They're going to be open for a while. So if you'd love to do a pop-up here at the Nest on the weekend, we'd love to have you.
Yeah.
We're at the end. And as always, at the end, I give basically open mic, open time, whoever you want to shout out, whatever you want to promote, whatever's upcoming, whatever. Basically, open mic, say whatever you want to say to close us out.
I would say thank you to all of our collaborators, anyone who's vended, done a workshop, modeled for us, helped in any way,
Move
thank you.
things.
Move things. We wouldn't be here without everybody, so thank you. And also check out our event schedule. We drop them on the 1st of every single month. They tend to sell out really quickly, like Danielle was saying earlier in the episode. We haven't even really had to be doing marketing for any of our events for them to sell out, which has been really exciting. So if you see something on the event schedule, make sure you register ASAP so that you can come.
And come to our menswear party. If this is out, I don't know if it's gonna be out before.
Yeah.
If it's out after, come in and shop our menswear.
Yeah. It's masculine style. So we're excited that anyone who walks through the door can find something that fits their style. And we're throwing a really fun, huge launch party the last Friday of February to celebrate this launch and give people an opportunity to shop it firsthand as well before we drop it on our e-commerce.
Yeah. And we want to thank our community. You're the reason we are here.
Yeah.
So thanks for keep coming and coming back.
Yeah.
Well, with that, thank you both so much for, coming on the show, sharing your experience, sharing just everything into the journey of the Nest. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. And till next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so fun.
And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks goes to this episode's guests, Charlotte von Meister and Danielle Sturm. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia, with audio editing and mixing by Anthony Ferreira. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.